I'm joined this year, Earth Hour falls on Saturday at 8:30 p.m. worldwide, so mark that down on your calendar and flick off the lights. I'm joined now by Sudhanshu Sarronwala. He's Executive Director of Communications and Marketing at the World Wildlife Fund International. Sudhanshu, give us an idea. What's the point behind the idea of going dark for an hour? How does it make a difference?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So Earth Hour is really about people. It's about the voices of the people. It's about the collective power of individuals in terms of making their point about the environment or raising an issue, participating in a global conversation and pressing for action. This year, we're asking people to connect to Earth, to be able to raise awareness and press for action around the loss of nature, because many people don't realize that some of the basic things that we take for granted, like the air we breathe, like the water we drink, like the food we eat, all of it comes from nature's offerings. And if we don't take care of nature, we are actually in a bit of a spot here, because the loss of nature and the rate of the loss of nature is very dramatic and extremely worrying.
Yeah, you used the word dramatic. I was reading some of the literature. It says Earth Hour is aimed to inform, inspire, and empower people to drive climate and environmental action. Do you feel like the need for that is just growing every year and that you're sort of racing against the clock?
Well, there is a lot of great action that's come out of people participating. You're all aware of the Paris Agreement that happened in 2015, which was definitive action towards carbon emissions. And the public played a significant role around the world. And we'd like to believe that Earth Hour played a role in helping to mobilize the public. We're at that point in time where we need to do the same for the loss of nature, because we are going to get impacted as humanity, as society, in terms of the loss of the benefits of nature, in terms of the air we breathe, the food we eat, the healthy water we get, because all of this comes from nature's offerings.
But you mentioned the Paris Climate Agreement, and yet the U.S. president has backed away from it, and obviously the United States, one of the great polluters out there. I mean, how do you feel about that?
So you've got 193 countries that signed the Paris Agreement, and everybody is very committed to delivering on it. In fact, even from the US, the entire movement of We Are Still In is very strong. There's 2,500 leaders from city halls, universities, boardrooms who have committed to achieving the carbon emissions target. They represent about 130 million people in the country. So there is every hope that we will hit the carbon emissions target, regardless of the federal statement on it.
Yeah, you've got some iconic places involved: Empire State Building, Eiffel Tower, just to name a couple. You also have some areas that you're focusing on, like Colombia, Guatemala, and Nepal, for example. Talk to us about that.
So one of the big areas that is critical in this whole thing is forests, because forests contribute about 15% of carbon emissions when it comes to degradation of forests. So in Colombia, they're actually working towards net deforestation, zero net deforestation by 2020, and they're using Earth Hour as a platform for people to connect to Earth, to connect to forests, because that's where we need to get to. Just to put it into perspective, the amount of carbon emissions coming out of forests when it's degraded is equivalent to all of the transportation sectors in the world. That's all, regardless of the mode of transport. So that's a very important area that we're working on, and that extends to some of the other countries that you talked about. Likewise, for countries in like Nepal, similar things are happening there in terms of people movement to press for greater legislative action around these areas of nature and biodiversity.
Sudhanshu Sarronwala joining us from Singapore. Thanks so much for joining us on China 24.